of a new book. Very fascinating story. When life throws you curves, keep swinging. David Vince is a double amputee baseball coach who has authored this inspirational memoir. David, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Appreciate you having me on this morning.
Hey, Tim and I were discussing earlier, I think before the program. Now, the name of your book is When Life Throws You Curves, Keep Swinging. Are you supposed to keep swinging at a curveball? This is kind of a trick question here.
Yes, sir. The curve is a metaphor for adversity. Anything that comes into your life that throws your life off center or catches you off guard, unexpected. And I actually had a no curveball rule with my teams. Don't swing at the curveball until you at least get one strike, because most pitchers couldn't throw it consistently for a strike.
Where do you coach today, David?
I'm retired. Retired in 2010. I live in Ragley, Louisiana, which is north of Lake Charles. I'm now doing speaking engagements in support of the book. I do private lessons for hitting and pitching, and I also do some work on behalf of the Gideons, which speak on behalf of the Gideons, raising funds to distribute Bibles in hotels and nursing homes across the country.
Did you grow up in Louisiana, or?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in Louisiana. I was born in Bogalusa, which is north of New Orleans, across Lake Pontchartrain. I finished high school in West Monroe, Louisiana, and I finished college at McNeese State in Lake Charles. I coached the first 8 years of my career in Louisiana, and then I left the state, and I've coached all over. The last 14 years I coached was in Florida.
So you were born in Bogalusa?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want people to know around the country who don't live in this region, that is a real town. That's a real name for a town. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's a paper mill town. So
Bogalusa. But anyway, Coach David Vince is with us. His book is very interesting. It's his testimony. It's his story. Is When Life Throws You Curves, Keep Swinging. David, when I read the description of you on the back of the book, I had to read this first sentence twice. It says, an above-knee double amputee since birth. And then I hear you describing your career in baseball, and I'm saying, how can someone with your disability, is it okay to call somebody disabled?
Yes, sir.
Anymore? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's check with the Associated Press.
But anyway, that disability could possibly,
be involved with baseball and any
coach hitting.
Yeah.
And things like that. So tell us about your growing up, and how you dealt with this situation.
Well, when I was born, my legs were amputated when I was about a year and a half old, and of course there's a lot of naysayers out there. Doctors told me I'd never walk without crutches. I put the crutches down when I was 8 years old, and a big part of my message in the book is you don't listen to naysayers. And doctors told me I'd never have children, and I ended up having a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 3-year-old now. But I had parents and grandparents that didn't allow me to use can't in my vocabulary, and certainly weren't going to let me use my handicap as an excuse not to achieve. And so I grew up with a lot of support. I gave my life to Christ when I was 8 years old, and I quickly discovered 2 verses in the Bible that changed my attitude and perspective on my handicap and condition. The first one was Romans 8:28, which says, all things work together for good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Now, prior to finding that verse, I didn't see anything good about having my legs amputated. I was intensely bullied in elementary school, and that verse doesn't mean that everything in life that's going to happen to you is going to always be good. It means that God can bring good out of bad situations, and that my life's a testimony to that. And the second verse was Philippians 4:13, which I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And that verse, prior to finding that verse, I always focused on what I couldn't do. I couldn't run. I couldn't jump. I couldn't physically play any of the sports that I grew up with a love of. But what it does mean that when I found that verse is that, well, you can do all things are possible with Christ's help. And so that gave me the courage and the faith to step out. And basically, combine that with the poem by Robert Frost, The Road Less Traveled. I bumped into when I was in high school, two roads diverged in the woods, and I chose the one less traveled. Well, certainly being a double amputee as a coach was the road less traveled. There's not many of us out there in that condition. And so my Christian faith is what gave me the confidence to pursue this career.
Now, David, why? I mean, I'm sure some of our listeners and those watching are wondering why you had your legs amputated at 1.5 years old.
Well, I was born with the birth defect. We didn't know what it was called at the time, and then years later, my daughter's born with the same birth defect, and we did DNA testing, and we found that I was carrying a defective gene, but I was born, it's called tibial hemimelia, which means a lack of leg bone. So I had either one or the other leg bone was missing in both legs. They had a couple of exploratory surgeries to see how bad it was, to see if it could be repaired without the amputation, and the diagnosis was no, it could not. And of course, it was 1959 when I was born, and 1960 when I was having the legs amputated. So, you know, technology is not what it is today, and they amputated me above the knee. Now, my daughter was born years later, second Sierra. She's born with the same birth defect, tibial hemimelia, but she only has Symes amputation, which means only the feet. They didn't get her above the knee, so she has her knees. She wears prosthetic legs like I do and walks without a cane or crutch. But she has more mobility than I do because I'm above knee and she wasn't, and that's just the difference. She was born in 2000, so the difference in technology. You know, when I was born, it was just get it above the knee, and when she's born, it's just a Symes amputation. So that was the major difference. I walked crutches till I was 8 years old, and then I put the crutches down when I was 8, and been going ever since without a cane or crutch.
We're talking to Coach David Vince. David wrote a book about his life called When Life Throws You Curves, Keep Swinging. He is an above-knee double amputee, but yet coached baseball 29 years, including
470 victories.
Yes, was named Coach of the Year 10 times, had over 30 players earn baseball scholarships, and 5 players selected to the Major League Baseball draft. Your book, how can people get a copy of this book?
I have a website. It's www.davidvince.com. And there I have my bio. I have some endorsements. I have some big-name endorsements, Bobby Bowden, Lou Holtz, Johnny Bench, Hall of Famer, Josh Hamilton, baseball coach at LSU, Paul Maneri, retired baseball coach Dale Brown, and also Mike Martin from Florida State, to name a few, Joe Madden of the Tampa Bay Rays. And I have their endorsements posted on that website, and there's a place that says order the book here. It's through PayPal and a credit card. And if we have e-readers out there, that now that's a big popular thing. They can get it at BarnesandNoble.com for the Nook. Did you ever
struggle, David? You mentioned bullying. You mean to tell me that other kids would bully you because of your disability?
Yes, sir. When I was in elementary school, the game was how many times can we shove David to the ground in a 20-minute recess without the teacher looking. Most days it was 4 or 5 times. You know, I'd pick myself up, dust myself off, grab my crutches, regain their balance, and I would be shoved to the ground again. And then the year later, we were supposed to have that was physical bullying. A year later, we were supposed to have gotten an upstairs classroom, and of course, I couldn't maneuver the stairs with the wrist crutches, and so they didn't get that classroom. So the emotional bullying started. My classmates would remind me, "It's your fault. If you wasn't in our grade or in our class, we'd be upstairs." The thing about the upstairs classroom was it had a big bay window where you could look outside and watch PE going on, or watch the recess, anything but pay attention to the teacher's lesson, I guess. And they were upset they didn't get that classroom. So that was some emotional bullying. But as I got older and got into high school, kids have been around me more, became more familiar with me. That really dissipated. I didn't see any bullying in high school, but it was pretty brutal in the elementary days.
You know, David, you never played baseball, but your father was a basketball coach. Your younger brother was a good baseball player. So how did you learn the game? Of course, not everyone who coaches has played, but the expectation is you're on baseball teams or you're around baseball a lot. So how did you learn the game in order to become such a successful coach?
Well, one of the biggest myths out there is that you have to be a great player to be a great coach, and that's usually just the opposite. Most of your great coaches, especially at the major league level for sure, were mediocre to average players at best, and that forced them to be a student of the game, to learn the nuances of the techniques and how to teach it, and that's what I did. You know, I worked camps at LSU when Skip Bertman was winning all those national championships there. I sat down with Ron Polk, who was coach at Mississippi State, who's won multiple national championships, and Augie Garrido at the University of Texas, and to make sure that I was teaching the game right. I knew that I wasn't going to have a playing career credibility, that kids would instantly respect me as their baseball coach. You know, when I show up, I'm a guy who's never played baseball and has never didn't have any legs, you know, and certainly never coached when I started. And so I had to have something that was going to get the players' attention. So I prided myself on being as knowledgeable as I could. I attended clinics, worked camps, watched videos, read books, and made myself very, very knowledgeable in all facets of the game. And then the other thing, I consider myself old school, even though I'm 53. I was very organized and structured. I coached football for 8 years as an assistant coach, and that gave me the organizational skills on the structure of practice. We'd never have more than 4 kids in a group, and we had multiple stations going on at the same time. So there wasn't any down or wasted time at my practices, and I was very disciplined with my kids, and we had consequences for screw-ups, and if you missed practice, you know, if you were late, you ran a minute for every minute you were late. You're 10 minutes late, you run for 10 minutes before you touch a baseball. And so those 3 things caught the attention of my players. And then early in my career, my very first team that I coached played for the state championship in Louisiana. So that would go a long way in proving that I could do the job despite not having the playing career. So later on in my career, my baseball success and my resume overcame it. But initially, the skepticism was there. I lost the very first 4, that year that we played for the state championship, I lost the very first 4 games that we coached. And the players were ready to, you know, hang the principal and the AD. They gave us a coach that never played baseball in his life. They gave us a coach that don't have any legs. Of course, the third thing they would say, if you grew up in Louisiana and Texas, football's king. They said, well, they're trying to kill baseball to build up football around here. Well, that wasn't the case because I was assistant football coach, too. But the other 2 things were true. I had never played, and I didn't have any legs. But once I proved to the kids that I was knowledgeable and I was organized and structured, you know, they bought in. And like I said, you said earlier, you know, I had 30 players that got college scholarships, so I was blessed to have good players to begin with, and that's how you win, was with good players.
Talking to Coach David Vince from Louisiana, spent many years in the high school ranks in Louisiana coaching baseball, won over 470 games, career wins, and then he overcame a childhood disability, a double amputee since birth, above knee double amputee since birth. And David, we got 4 or 5 minutes here left. You mentioned